Hi everyone, I'm Jody Robinson, and I've been working on doing a few videos that are to show you how you can do some of the digital designs that I've shown lately on Facebook and on Instagram, because most of them originated from me doing them freehand, and so that's why I digitized them. But I want you to be able to see, because I know not everyone has a computerized quilting machine, that you can do these all freehand. Are they going to look exactly the same? I mean, you know, every one of this is the same as this. Probably not. Does that matter? No, it doesn't matter, because I've done most of these designs for a really long time freehand. Now the difference is going to be that this does it perfectly. But when I stitch something like this freehand, I purposely make them random. So they're like purposely random. I don't try to make everyone the same size, because it's just much easier if you randomize it. If you make, you know, maybe one narrow, one wider. So when we look at this, you have these two curvy lines. Again, if I were doing this freehand, and when I do it freehand, I don't make my echoes perfect, because it's just kind of hard to do that. I don't want to have to use a curved ruler to do that. I like to make them more flowing, and you'll see that whenever we stitch it. You know, like I'll bring one line closer and one farther away. I think it gives it a lot more flow to it. But on this one, you know, this is just because, you know, it's digitized. It comes out absolutely perfect. So you do have to understand that you're probably going to get a little different look to it. So let me draw this for you. So I just with a pencil marked out, this is the basic shape. You know, if I were doing this as an all over like I did on that quilt, but freehand, I would just grab my marking tool, whichever one I happen to be using and will show on a particular quilt, and I would just do a random wavy line, not perfectly, you know, under curve, over curve, and make it mirror like that. I would do it totally random, so they didn't have to all be the same. I would actually probably make some of these random. I wouldn't measure out to make these the same size even. I might have a bigger one at the top, this one, a smaller one. And so this design is done in 2 passes. So we have the stitching that's going to come from, we're going to work across the bottom first. And there's a reason for that. So you want to think random. If you want to try to have them all the same size, you can do that too. So what I would do if I wanted to do that is kind of just give myself some dividing lines here. So I kind of try to fit them in there. But I really, when I do this freehand, I really don't mark these, because I like them to be, like I would do one this size, I might do one as wide as 2. So I just totally do them random. So we're going to go across the bottom, and what we're going to do is that arch shape with the little kind of an oval. And you're going to notice every one of my shapes that come up also aren't going to be the same. And I'm good with that. I just, you know, I'm going to change the height of them, just like on the digital design. So I'm going to start right here. And I am going to go ahead and stitch this wavy line, so I have a bottom to my shapes. So now what I'm going to do is I want to visualize, you never want to go farther up than probably 2/3 of the way, because you're going to have stitching coming down from this side as well. So I'm going to go up here. When I get in the center, I'll kind of pause, put in this oval, and then continue on. Maybe I make this one not as high. And see, these are not going to be all the same, but I really like the look of this. This to me looks like stacked stones, where no one is exactly the same as the other. Even these aren't going to be the same shape. And you'll see when I stitch it that every one is slightly different. Okay, and now if you were doing this as an all over and you marked these wavy lines on a whole quilt, you would have worked, you would have stitched this all the way over to the far side of your quilt, done these designs all the way back, so then you can travel along the edge of the quilt. And if you want to put this line in, you can. So we would stitch that one over. And now we're going to work our way back. So the reason we wanted to do the bottom first, because now we only need to do an arch. So it's going to come down to meet this little oval in the center. So if we had done the top first and worked our way back to make these match up, it's really hard to see where you're going because your hopping foot is blocking the way. So that's why it's a good idea to do the bottom first and then come back. And we don't need the little oval because we did that on the first pass. And it's as simple as that. I mean, if you wanted more quilting, and I'll show you a couple of options when we stitch it, but you could, you know, add additional echo lines in these if you wanted. And then, of course, if you want to have those wavy lines between each, at that point, I would come up and do this random, and see how I'm going to go really close, but then farther away. And I would do that the whole way across, just kind of go closer and farther away to kind of give it, I think it gives it the look of a lot more movement that way. So let me go ahead over to the machine and get set up, and I'll show you how to stitch this. Okay, now that I've shown you how to draw that design, we're now over here at the machine, and I've kind of marked out how I drew it, just kind of this wavy line. So you have to envision, you know, if this were, you're going to do this as an all over, you would mark this wavy line the whole way across your quilt. And just line after line, they don't even necessarily have to be evenly spaced the whole way through the quilt. And for me, when I do this kind of a design freehand, I purposely don't make them all the same width, and I don't make these, yeah, I kind of tried to draw them kind of even, the same on the top and the bottom. But usually, if I'm doing this on a quilt, freehand, I purposely, I hope you can, let me go up here and draw it. I'll do like these kind of like totally random lines, top and bottom, because then I don't have to worry about drawing it the same for every one, and it kind of, I think it gives it a little more flow, you know, and movement in there. But it's just going to be easier for you to understand how it works if I mark it on this nice even one, I think. So the one thing about this, we're just going to randomly do these as we go across. And again, I mean, feel free to mark, you know, if you need to visualize some spacing the first couple of times you stitch this. And you'll see, I'm not marking these well, I'll mark them kind of the same. I guess it might be easier as far as learning it. But once you get the feel for it, I would suggest mixing it up, like do wider ones and more narrow ones, because then there's no need for it to be so perfect. Like you don't have to worry about this one looking just like this one, or this one wobbled a little bit. If you make them all random, I think it has a really great look, and it just takes away a lot of the stress, you know, for you when you're stitching it to keep it even. So like I said when we were drawing, it's important to make these totally random. Now the one thing, and I mentioned it when we were drawing, is that you want to always do on the computerized version, just because of the way I had to draw it to make it work, it goes across the top, but it doesn't matter because the computer is stitching it. But when you're doing this freehand, you really want to do the bottom first, because if you do the top first, and then we're going to stitch from this side going up here to match what's there, our vision is somewhat limited because the hopping foot and everything is in the way. So if we do the bottom first, which we can see what we're doing here, then when we come back across the top, it's easy to see right where we're trying to go. Okay, so we're going to just start right here on the bottom. And I am going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch this wavy line first. Does it matter if I'm right on the line? I should have probably been better. That has a little bit of a dip in it, but it's fine. It's going to be fine. So now the other thing to remember is we're going to stitch from this side and this side. So you never want to go the whole way to the top. You want to leave enough room so you can put another shape coming down from the top, okay? And I'm going to randomly kind of do this. So, and this is when we want to put in that kind of oval shape as well. So I'm going to stitch up. I'm going to go about that far. So right here about the center, I'm going to throw in that oval and then arch back down. Okay, I'm going to do the next one. I'm going to go up a little bit farther this time. The oval and back down. Pause here, do my oval and back down. Oval and back down. I'm going to go up a little higher with this one. And back down. Now, I'm going to go ahead and stitch right up here. And so, see, if you were doing this as an all over, you're not even going to need to have these lines because you would be going the whole way across the quilt and then you would work your way the whole way back. So, this would be essentially the edge of the quilt. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I do want to also have this line in here. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but this time we don't need to put the oval because we covered that already. And we're just going to arch down here and back. Arch up to that oval and back. I mean, and now I want you to look at this, right? I mean, you see, these aren't all exactly the same. This one's a little more rounded. This one's more of an arch. You can try to keep them all the same, but I like to not have to think about that. I really love the more organic look of it, that they're all different. It reminds me of like kind of stones, stacked stones up somewhat. And arch up here, back down. Back down. I mean, it's really quite simple. Maybe you feel like this is a little, I really like it. I mean, I think it's a really cool looking design and it goes really fast and it's easy to stitch. If you feel like maybe you want your quilting to be a little more dense, you certainly, as you did these arches, could have, you know, maybe as you stitched one, maybe you wanted to put some echoes in here, okay, but you need to be back over here, so I would do 2 echoes, so I end up where I need to be, if that makes sense, to travel to the next one. Or, after you stitch this one, maybe you do 1 echo and leave it at that. I mean, that adds a little more density to the design. And I would do it as I go. But you have to remember, then you're going to have to travel again along here if you only do 1. My preference would probably be to add some sort of a fill in here that will act as my traveling path. So then I would have these pebbles to get me here to go right into this next one. Okay. So, I mean, it's clearly not as precise as the computer. But gosh, I mean, it looks awesome, whether you do it freehand or with the computer. So I hope you'll give that one a try. It's really fun and it goes really fast. And you might too, you know, I just showed this with the line here and the line here. You could also, if you wanted it to look like the quilt I did with my Elevate, you can echo this. And again, you see what I did? I went really close there and then really far away. That is how I like to do echo lines if I do them. Let me go over here so you can see it good. I like to do them totally not evenly spaced. I do not try to use my hopping foot even to make this a perfect echo, because when you start to have all of these randomly wavy echoes, it adds a lot more movement to the quilt. So I hope you guys will give that a try. Have a good day.